Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad, translated by Max Muller. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Jyoti Taravanat. First Adhyaya, First Brahmana. Verily, the dawn is the head of the horse, which is fit for sacrifice, the sun its eye, the wind its breath, the mouth the Visvanara fire, the ear the body of the sacrificial horse. Heaven is the back, the sky the belly, the earth the chest, the quarters the two sides, the intermediate quarters the ribs, the members the seasons, the joints the months and half months, the feet days and nights, the bones the stars, the flesh the clouds. The half digested food is the sand, the rivers the bowels, the liver the lungs, the mountains, the hairs the herbs and trees. As the sun rises, it is the forepart; as it sets, the hind part of the horse. When the horse shakes itself, then it lightens; when it kicks, it thunders; when it makes water, it rains. Voice is its voice. Verily, day arose after the horse as the golden vessel, called Mahiman, greatness, which at the sacrifice is placed before the horse. Its place is in the eastern sea. The night arose after the horse as the silver vessel called Mahiman, which at the sacrifice is placed behind the horse. Its place is in the western sea. Verily, these two vessels or greatness arose to be on each side of the horse. As a racer he carried the Devas, as a stallion the Gandharvas, as a runner the Asuras, as a horseman. The sea is its kin, the sea is its birthplace. Second Brahmana. In the beginning there was nothing to be perceived here whatsoever. By death indeed all this was concealed, by hunger, for death is hunger. Death, the first being, thought, let me have a body. Then he moved about, worshipping. From him, thus worshipping, water was produced. And he said, verily, there appeared to me while I worshipped Arkate, water cow. This is why water is called Arka. Surely there is water or pleasure for him who thus knows the reason why water is called Arka. Verily, water is Arka, and what was there as the froth of the water, that was hardened and became the earth. On that earth he, death, rested, and from him thus resting and heated, Agni, Viraj, proceeded, full of light. That being divided itself threefold: Aditya, the sun, as the third, and Vayu, the air, as the third. That spirit, Prana, became threefold. The head was the eastern quarter, and the arms this and that quarter. Then the tail was the western quarter, and the two legs this and that quarter, that is, the northwest and southwest. The sides were the southern and northern quarters, the back heaven, the belly the sky, the dust the earth. Thus he, Mrityu as Arka, stands firm in the water, and he who knows this stands firm wherever he goes. He desired, "Let a second body be born of me," and he, Death or Hunger, embraced speech in his mind. Then the seed became the ear. Before that time there was no ear. Speech bore him so long as the ear, and after that time sent him forth. Then when he was born, he, Death, opened his mouth as if to swallow him. He cried, "Bhan!" and that became speech. He thought, "If I kill him, I shall have but little food." He therefore brought forth by that speech and by that body, the ear, all whatsoever exists, the Rik, the Yajus, the Saman, the meters, the sacrifices, men and animals. And whatever he, Death, brought forth, that he resolved to eat, Ad. Verily, because he eats everything, therefore is Aditi, Death, called Aditi. He who thus knows why Aditi is called Aditi becomes an eater of everything, and everything becomes his food. He desired to sacrifice again with a greater sacrifice. He toiled and performed penance. And while he toiled and performed penance, glorious power went out of him. Verily, glorious power means the senses, prana. Then, when the senses had gone out, the body took to swelling, swayutham, and mind was in the body. He desired that this body should be fit for sacrifice, medhya, and that he should be embodied by it. Then he became a horse, aswa, because it swelled aswath, and was fit for sacrifice, medhya. And this is why the horse sacrifice is called Aswamedha. Verily, he who knows him thus knows the Aswamedha. Then, letting the horse free, he thought, and at the end of a year he offered it up for himself, while he gave up the other animals to the deities. Therefore, the sacrificers offered up the purified horse belonging to Prajapati as dedicated to all the deities. Verily, the shining sun is the Aswamedha sacrifice, and his body is the ear. Agni is the sacrificial fire, Arka, and these worlds are his bodies. These two are the sacrificial fire and the Aswamedha sacrifice, and they are again one deity, namely Death. He who knows this overcomes another death. Death does not reach him. Death is his self. He becomes one of those deities. Third Brahmana. There were two kinds of descendants of Prajapati, the Devas and the Asuras. Now the Devas were indeed the younger, the Asuras the elder ones. The Devas who were struggling in these worlds said, "Well, let us overcome the Asuras at the sacrifices, the Jyotishtoma, by means of the Udgita." They said to speech, Vak, "Do thou sing out for us the Udgita." "Yes," said the speech, and sang the Udgita. Whatever delight there is in speech, that she obtained for the Devas by singing the three Pavamanas, but that she pronounced well in the other 9 Pavamanas, that was for herself. The Asuras knew, verily through this singer they will overcome us. They therefore rushed at the singer and pierced her with evil. That evil which consists in saying what is bad, that is that evil. Then they, the Devas, said to Breath sent, "Do thou sing out for us." "Yes," said Breath, and sang. Whatever delight there is in breath, smell, that he obtained for the Devas by singing, but that he smelled well, that was for himself. The Asuras knew, verily through this singer they will overcome us. They therefore rushed at the singer and pierced him with evil. That evil which consists in smelling what is bad, that is that evil. Then they said to the Eye, "Do thou sing out for us." "Yes," said the Eye, and sang. Whatever delight there is in the Eye, that he obtained for the Devas by singing, but that he saw well, that was for himself. The Asuras knew, verily through this singer they will overcome us. They therefore rushed at the singer and pierced him with evil. That evil which consists in seeing what is bad, that is that evil. Then they said to the Ear, "Do thou sing out for us." "Yes," said the Ear, and sang. Whatever delight there is in the Ear, that he obtained for the Devas by singing, but that he heard well, that was for himself. The Asuras knew, verily through this singer they will overcome us. They therefore rushed at the singer and pierced him with evil. That evil which consists in hearing what is bad, that is that evil. Then they said to the Mind, "Do thou sing out for us." "Yes," said the Mind, and sang. Whatever delight there is in the Mind, that he obtained for the Devas by singing, but that he thought well, that was for himself. The Asuras knew, verily through this singer they will overcome us. They therefore rushed at the singer and pierced him with evil. That evil which consists in thinking what is bad, that is that evil. Thus they overwhelmed these deities with evils. Thus they pierced them with evil. Then they said to the Breath in the mouth, "Do thou sing for us." "Yes," said the Breath, and sang. The Asuras knew, verily through this singer they will overcome us. They therefore rushed at him and pierced him with evil. Now as a ball of earth will be scattered when hitting a stone, thus they perished, scattered in all directions. Hence the Devas rose, the Asuras fell. He who knows this rises by his self, and the enemy who hates him falls. Then they, the Devas, said, "Where was he then who thus stuck to us?" It was the breath within the mouth, Aisyentar, and therefore called Ayasa. He was the sap rasa of the limbs Anga, and therefore called Angirasa. That deity was called Dur, because death was far Duran from it. From him who knows this, death is far off. That deity, after having taken away the evil of those deities, namely death, sent it to where the end of the quarters of the earth is. There he deposited their sins. Therefore let no one go to a man, let no one go to the end of the quarters of the earth, that he may not meet there with evil, with death. That deity, after having taken away the evil of those deities, namely death, carried them beyond death. He carried speech across first. When speech had become freed from death, it became what it had been before, Agni, fire. That Agni, after having stepped beyond death, shines. Then he carried breath sent across. When breath had become freed from death, it became Vayu, air. That Vayu, after having stepped beyond death, blows. Then he carried the eye across. When the eye had become freed from death, it became Aditya, the sun. That Aditya, after having stepped beyond death, burns. Then he carried the ear across. When the ear had become freed from death, it became the quarters, space. These are our quarters, space, which have stepped beyond death. Then he carried the mind across. When the mind had become freed from death, it became the moon, Chandramas. That moon, after having stepped beyond death, shines. Thus does that deity carry him who knows this across death. Then breath, vital, by singing, obtained for himself eatable food. For whatever food is eaten by breath alone, and in it breath rests. The Devas said, "Verily, thus far, whatever food there is, thou hast by singing acquired it for thyself. Now therefore give us a share in that food." He said, "You there enter into me." They said, "Yes," and entered all into him. Therefore, whatever food is eaten by breath, by it the other senses are satisfied. If a man knows this, then his own relations come to him in the same manner. He becomes their supporter, their chief leader, their strong ruler. And if everyone tries to oppose one who is possessed of such knowledge among his own relatives, then he will not be able to support his own belongings. But he who follows the man who is possessed of such knowledge, and who, with his permission, wishes to support those whom he has to support, he indeed will be able to support his own belongings. He was called Ayasa Angirasa, for he is the sap, rasa, of the limbs, anga. Verily, breath is the sap of the limbs. Yes, breath is the sap of the limbs. Therefore, from whatever limb breath goes away, that limb withers. For breath verily is the sap of the limbs. He, breath, is also Brihaspati. For speech is Brihati, Rig Veda, and he is her lord. Therefore, he is Brihaspati. He, breath, is also Brahmanaspati. For speech is Brahman, Yajurveda, and he is her lord. Therefore, he is Brahmanaspati. He, breath, is also Saman, the Udgita, for speech is Saman, Samaveda, and that is both speech, Sa, and breath, Ama. That is why Saman is called Saman. Or because he is equal, Sama, to a grub, equal to a gnat, equal to an elephant, equal to those three worlds, nay, equal to this universe. Therefore he is Saman. He who thus knows this Saman obtains union and oneness with Saman. He breath is Udgita. Breath verily is Ut, for by breath this universe is upheld. Uttabda, and speech is Gita, song. And because he is Ut and Gita, therefore he breath is Udgita. And thus Brahmadatta Chaikitaneya, the grandson of Chaikitana, while taking Soma, Rajan, said, "May this Soma strike my head off, if Ayasa Angirasa sang another Udgita than this." He sang it indeed as speech and breath. He who knows what is the property of this Saman obtains property. Now verily its property is tone only. Therefore let a priest who is going to perform the sacrificial work of a Sama singer desire that his voice may have a good tone, and let him perform the sacrifice with a voice that is in good tone. Therefore people who want a priest for a sacrifice look out for one who possesses a good voice, as for one who possesses property. He who thus knows what is the property of that Saman obtains property. He who knows what is the gold of that Saman obtains gold. Now verily its gold is tone only. He who thus knows what is the gold of that Saman obtains gold. He who knows what is the support of that Saman, he is supported. Now verily its support is speech only. For as supported in speech, that breath is sung as that Saman. Some say the support is in food. Next follows the Abhyaroha, the ascension of the Pavamana verses. Verily the Pastotri begins to sing the Saman, and when he begins, then let him, the sacrificer, recite these three Yajus verses. Lead me from the unreal to the real. Lead me from darkness to light. Lead me from death to immortality. Now when he says, lead me from the unreal to the unreal is verily death, the real immortality. He therefore says, lead me from death to immortality. Make me immortal. When he says, lead me from death to immortality, there is nothing there, as it were, hidden, obscure, requiring explanation. Next come the other stotras, with which the priest may obtain food for himself by singing them. Therefore let the sacrificer, while these stotras are being sung, ask for a boon, whatever desire he may desire. An Udgatri priest who knows this obtains by his singing whatever desire he may desire, either for himself or for the sacrificer. This knowledge indeed is called the conqueror of the worlds. He who thus knows this Saman, for him there is no fear of his not being admitted to the worlds. Fourth Brahmana. In the beginning, this was self alone in the shape of a person, Purusha. He looking round saw nothing but his self. He first said, this is I. Therefore he became I by name. Therefore even now, if a man is asked, he first says, "This is I," and then pronounces the other names which he may have. And because before Purva all this, he, the Self, burnt down all evils. Therefore he was a person Usha. Verily, he who knows this burns down every one who tries to be before him. He feared, and therefore anyone who is lonely fears. He thought, as there is nothing but myself, why should I fear? Thence his fear passed away. For what should he have feared? Verily, fear arises from a second only. But he felt no delight. Therefore a man who is lonely feels no delight. He wished for a second. He was so large as man and wife together. He then made this his self to fall into Path, and thence arose husband Pati and wife Patni. Therefore Yagnavalkya said, "We two are thus, each of us, like half a shell." Therefore the void which was there is filled by the wife. He embraced her, and men were born. She thought, "How can he embrace me after having produced me from himself? I shall hide myself." She then became a cow. The other became a bull and embraced her, and hence cows were born. The one became a mare, the other a stallion. The one a male ass, the other a female ass. He embraced her, and hence one-hoofed animals were born. The one became a she-goat, the other a he-goat. The one became a ewe, the other a ram. He embraced her, and hence goats and sheep were born. And thus he created everything that exists in pairs, down to the ants. He knew, "I indeed am this creation, for I created all this." Hence he became the creation, and he who knows this lives in this his creation. Next he thus produced fire by rubbing. From the mouth, as from the fire hole, and from the hands he created fire. Therefore both the mouth and the hands are inside without hair, for the fire hole is inside without hair. And when they say, "Sacrifice to this," or "Sacrifice to that god," each god is but his manifestation, for he is all gods. Now whatever there is moist, that he created from seed, this is Soma. So far verily is this universe either food or eater. Soma indeed is food, Agni eater. This is the highest creation of Brahman, when he created the gods from his better part, and when he, who was then mortal, created the immortals. Therefore it was the highest creation, and he who knows this lives in this his highest creation. Now all this was then undeveloped. It became developed by form and name, so that one could say, "He called so and so is such a one." Therefore At present also all this is developed by name and form, so that one can say, he called so and so is such a one. He, Brahman or the Self, entered thither to the very tips of the fingernails, as a razor might be fitted in a razor case, or as fire in a fireplace. He cannot be seen, for in part only. When breathing, he is breath by name; when speaking, speech by name; when seeing, eye by name; when hearing, ear by name; when thinking, mind by name. All these are but the names of his acts, and he who worships, regards him as the one or the other, does not know him, for he is apart from this, when qualified by the one or the other predicate. Let men worship him as Self, for in the Self all these are one. This Self is the footstep of everything, for through it one knows everything. And as one can find again by footsteps what was lost, thus he who knows this finds glory and praise. This which is nearer to us than anything, this Self is dearer than a son, dearer than wealth, dearer than all else. And if one were to say to one who declares another than the Self dear, then he will lose what is dear to him. Very likely it would be so. Let him worship the Self alone as dear. He who worships the Self alone as dear, the object of his love, will never perish. Here they say, if men think that by knowledge of Brahman they will become everything, what then did that Brahman know from whence all this sprang? Verily, in the beginning this was Brahman. That Brahman knew itself only, saying, I am Brahman. From it all this sprang. Thus whatever Deva was awakened so as to know Brahman, he indeed became that Brahman. And the same with Rishis and men. The Rishi Vamadeva saw and understood it, singing, I was Manu, moon, I was the sun. Therefore now also he who thus knows that he is Brahman becomes all this, and even the Devas cannot prevent it, for he himself is their Self. Now if a man worships another deity, thinking the deity is one and he another, he does not know. He is like a beast for the Devas. For verily, as many beasts nourish a man, thus does every man nourish the Devas. If only one beast is taken away, it is not pleasant. How much more when many are taken? Therefore, it is not pleasant to the Devas that men should know this. Verily, in the beginning this was Brahman, one only. That being one was not strong enough. It created still further the most excellent Kshatriya power, namely those Kshatriyas powers among the Devas, Indra, Varuna, Soma, Rudra, Parjanya, Yama, Mrityu, Isana. Therefore there is nothing beyond the Kshatriya, and therefore at Rajasuya sacrifice the Brahmana sits down below the Kshatriya. He confers that glory on the Kshatriya alone. But Brahman is everywhere the birthplace of the Kshatriya. Therefore, though a king is exalted, he sits down at the end of the sacrifice below the Brahman as his birthplace. He who injures himself injures his own birthplace. He becomes worse because he has injured one better than himself. He was not strong enough, He created the Vis people, the classes of Devas, which in their different orders are called Vasus, Rudras, Adityas, Visvedevas, Maruts. He was not strong enough. He created the Sudra Kala caste as Pushan, as Nourisher. This earth verily is Pushan, the Nourisher, for the earth nourishes all this whatsoever. He was not strong enough. He created still further the most excellent law, Dharma. Law is the Kshatriya power of the Kshatriya. Therefore, there is nothing higher than the law. Thenceforth, even a weak man rules a stronger with the help of the law, as with the help of a king. Thus, the law is what is called the true. And if a man declares what is true, they say he declares the law. And if he declares the law, they say he declares what is true. Thus both are the same. There are then this Brahman, Kshatriya, Vis and Sudra. Among the Devas, that Brahman existed as Agni, fire only. Among men, as Brahmana, as Kshatriya, through the divine Kshatriya, as Vaisya, through the divine Vaisya, as Sudra, through the divine Sudra. Therefore, people wish for their future state among the Devas through Agni, the sacrificial fire only, and among men through the Brahmana, for in these two forms did Brahman exist. Now, if a man departs this life without having seen his true future life in the self, then that self, not being known, does not receive and bless him, as if the Veda had not been read, or as if a good work had not been done. Nay, even if one does not know that self should perform here on earth some great holy work, it will perish for him in the end. Let a man worship the self only as his true state. If a man worships the self only as his true state, his work does not perish. For whatever he desires, that he gets from that self. Now verily, this self of the ignorant man is the world of all creatures. Insofar as man sacrifices and pours out libations, he is the world of the Devas. Insofar as he repeats the hymns, etc., he is the world of the Rishis. Insofar as he offers cakes to the fathers and tries to obtain offspring, he is the world of the fathers. Insofar as he gives shelter and food to men, he is the world of men. Insofar as he finds fodder and water for the animals, he is the world of the animals. Insofar as quadrupeds, birds, and even ants live in his house, he is their world. And as everyone wishes his own world not to be injured, thus all beings wish that he who knows this should not be injured. Verily, this is known and has been well reasoned. In the beginning this was self alone, one only. He desired, let there be a wife for me, that I may have offspring, and let there be wealth for me, that I may offer sacrifices. Verily, this is the whole desire, and even if wishing for more, he would not find it. Therefore, now also a lonely person desires, let there be a wife for me, that I may have offspring, and let there be wealth for me, that I may offer sacrifices. And so long as he does not obtain either of these things, he thinks he is incomplete. Now his completeness is made up as follows. Mind is his self, husband; speech, the wife; breath, the child; the eye all worldly wealth, for he finds it with the eye; the ear his divine wealth, for he hears it with the ear; the body, Atman, is his work, for with the body he works. This is the fivefold sacrifice, for fivefold is the animal, fivefold man, fivefold all this whatsoever. He who knows this obtains all this. Fifth Brahmana. When the Father of creation had produced by knowledge and penance work the 7 kinds of food, one of his foods was common to all beings. 2 he assigned to the Devas, 3 he made for himself, 1 he gave to the animals. In it all rests whatsoever breeds and breeds not. Why then do these not perish, though they are always eaten? He who knows this imperishable one, he eats food with his face. He goes even to the Devas, he lives on strength. When it is said that the Father produced by knowledge and penance the 7 kinds of food, it is clear that it was he who did so. When it is said that one of his foods was common, then that is that common food of his which is eaten. He who worships, eats that common food, is not removed from evil, for verily that food is mixed property. When it is said that 2 he assigned to the Devas, that is the Huta, which is sacrificed in fire, and the Prahuta, which is given away at a sacrifice. But they also say the new moon and full moon sacrifices are here intended, and therefore one should not offer them as an ishti or with a wish. When it is said that one he gave to animals, that is milk. For in the beginning, in their infancy, both men and animals live on milk, and therefore they either make a newborn child lick grita butter, or they make it take the breast. And they call a newborn creature a trinada, that is, not eating herbs. When it is said that in it all rests whatsoever breeds and breeds not, we see that all this whatsoever breeds and breeds not rests and depends on milk. And when it is said in another Brahmana that a man who sacrifices with milk a whole year overcomes death again, let him not think so. No, on the very day on which he sacrifices, on that day he overcomes death again, for he who knows this offers to the gods the entire food, namely milk. When it is said, why do these not perish, though they are always eaten? We answer, verily the person is the imperishable, and he produces that food again and again. When it is said, he who knows this imperishable one, then verily the person is the imperishable one, for he produces this food by repeated thought, and whatever he does not work by his works, that perishes. When it is said that he eats food with his face, then face means the mouth, he eats it with his mouth. When it is said that he goes even to the Devas, he lives on strength, that is meant as praise. When it is said that he made 3 for himself, that means that he made mind, speech, and breath for himself. As people say, my mind was elsewhere, I did not see, my mind was elsewhere, I did not hear, It is clear that a man sees with his mind and hears with his mind. Desire, representation, doubt, faith, want of faith, memory, forgetfulness, shame, reflection, fear, all this is mind. Therefore, even if a man is touched on the back, he knows it through the mind. Whatever sound there is, that is speech. Speech indeed is intended for an end or object. It is nothing by itself. The up breathing, the down breathing, the back breathing, the out breathing, the on breathing, all that is breathing is breath, prana only. Verily, that self consists of it. That self consists of speech, mind, and breath. These are the three worlds. Earth is speech, sky, mind, heaven, breath. These are the three Vedas. The Rig Veda is speech, the Yajur Veda, mind, the Sama Veda, breath. These are the Devas, fathers and men. The Devas are speech, the fathers mind, men breath. These are father, mother, and child. The father is mind, the mother speech, the child breath. These are what is known, what is to be known, and what is unknown. What is known has the form of speech, for speech is known. Speech, having become this, protects man. What is to be known has the form of mind, for mind is what is to be known. Mind, having become this, protects man. What is unknown has the form of breath, for breath is unknown. Breath, having become this, protects man. Of that speech, which is the food of Prajapati, earth is the body, light the form, namely this fire. And so far as speech extends, so far extends the earth, so far extends fire. Next, of this mind, heaven is the body, light the form, namely this sun. And so far as this mind extends, so far extends heaven, so far extends the sun. If they, fire and sun, embrace each other, then wind is born, and that is Indra, and he is without a rival. Verily, a second is a rival, and he who knows this has no rival. Next, of this breath, water is the body, light the form, namely this moon. And so far as this breath extends, so far extends water, so far extends the moon. These are all alike, all endless, and he who worships them as finite obtains a finite world, but he who worships them as infinite obtains an infinite world. That Prajapati is the ear, and he consists of 16 digits. The nights indeed are his 15 digits, the fixed point his 16th digit. He is increased and decreased by the nights. Having on the new moon night entered with the 16th part into everything that has life, he is thence born again in the morning. Therefore, let no one cut off the life of any living thing on that night, not even of a lizard, in honor, pujartam, of that deity. Now verily, that Prajapati, consisting of 16 digits, who is the ear, is the same as a man who knows this. His wealth constitutes the 15 digits, his self the 16th digit. He is increased and decreased by that wealth. His self is the knave, his wealth the felly. Therefore, even if he loses everything, if he lives but with his self, people say he lost the felly which can be restored again. Next, there are verily three worlds: the world of men, the world of the fathers, the world of the Devas. The world of men can be gained by a son only, not by any other work. By sacrifice, the world of the fathers; by knowledge, the world of the Devas is gained. The world of the Devas is the best of worlds, therefore they praise knowledge. Next follows the handing over. When a man thinks he is going to depart, he says to his son, "Thou art Brahman, the Veda so far as acquired by the father. Thou art the sacrifice, so far as performed by the father. Thou art the world." The son answers, "I am Brahman, I am the sacrifice, I am the world. Whatever has been learnt by the father, that taken as one is Brahman. Whatever sacrifices there are, they taken as one are the sacrifice. Whatever worlds there are, they taken as one are the world. Verily, here ends this, what has to be done by a father, namely study, sacrifice, etc. He, the son, being all this, preserved me from this world. Thus he thinks. Therefore they call a son who is instructed to do all this a world son, Lokya, and therefore they instruct him. When a father who knows this departs this world, then he enters into his son together with his own spirits, with speech, mind, and breath. If there is anything done amiss by the father, of all that the son delivers him, and therefore he is called Putra, son. By help of his son, the father stands firm in this world. Then these divine immortal spirits, speech, mind, and breath, enter into him. From the earth and from fire, divine speech enters into him. And verily that is divine speech, whereby whatever he says comes to be. From heaven and the sun, divine mind enters into him. And verily that is divine mind, whereby he becomes joyful and grieves no more. From water and the moon, divine breath, spirit enters into him. And verily that is divine breath, which, whether moving or not moving, does not tire, and therefore does not perish. He who knows this becomes the self of all beings. As that deity Hiranyagarbha is, so does he become. And as all beings honor the deity with sacrifice, etc., so do all beings honor him who knows this. Whatever grief these creatures suffer, that is all one, and therefore disappears. Only what is good approaches him. Verily, evil does not approach the Devas. Next follows the consideration of the observances, acts. Prajapati created the actions, active senses. When they had been created, they strove among themselves. Voice held, I shall speak. The eye held, I shall see. The ear held, I shall hear. And thus the other actions too, each according to its own act. Death, having become weariness, took them and seized them. Having seized them, death held them back from their work. Therefore speech grows weary, the eye grows weary, the ear grows weary. But death did not seize the eternal breath. Then the others tried to know him, and said, Verily, he is the best of us. He who, whether moving or not, does not tire and does not perish. Well, let all of us assume his form. Thereupon they all assumed his form, and therefore they are called after him breaths, spirits. In whatever family there is a man who knows this, they call that family after his name. And he who strives with one who knows this withers away and finally dies. So far with regard to the body. Now with regard to the deities. Agni, fire held, I shall burn. Aditya, the sun held, I shall warm. Chandramas, the moon held, I shall shine. And thus also the other deities, each according to the deity. And as it was with the central breath among the breaths, so it was with Vayu, the wind, among those deities. The other deities fade, not Vayu. Vayu is the deity that never sets. And here there is this sloka. He from whom the sun rises, and into whom it sets, he verily rises from the breath, and sets in the breath. Him the Devas made the law, he only is today, and he tomorrow also. Whatever these Devas determined then, that they perform today also. Therefore, let a man perform one observance only. Let him breathe up and let him breathe down, that the evil death may not reach him. And when he performs it, let him try to finish it. Then he obtains through it union and oneness with that deity, with prana. Sixth Brahmana. Verily, this is the triad, name, form and work. Of these names, that which is called speech is the Ukta, him, supposed to mean also origin. For from it all names arise. It is their Saman, song, supposed to mean also sameness. For it is the same as all names. It is their Brahman, prayer, supposed to mean also support. For it supports all names. Next of the forms, that which is called I is the Ukta, him. For from it all forms arise. It is their Sauman, song, for it is the same as all forms. It is their Brahman, prayer, for it supports all forms. Next of the works, that which is called body is the Ukta, him. For him it all works arise. It is their Sauman, song, for it is the same as all works. It is their Brahman, prayer, for it supports all works. That being a triad is one, namely this self, and the self being one is that triad. This is the immortal covered by the true. Verily, breath is the immortal, name and form are the true, and by them immortal is covered. End of first Adhyaya. Recording by Jyoti Taravanat.